Welcome back to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. Tonight, we travel north, beyond the lands where compasses falter, and even the stars hide from the wind, to a place where winter itself once wore a face. This is the story of the forgotten gods of winter. In the frozen months, when the sun faltered and the world turned white, there was a time before names, a time when winter itself was worshipped. They called them the forgotten gods of winter, though few now remember their faces, and fewer still dare to speak their names aloud when the frost creeps up the windows. It began, as most old things do, with silence, the kind of silence that lives beneath ice, dense, unbroken, a hush that swallows sound and breath alike. Long before churches rose, before calendars split the year into tidy boxes, the people of the north held their faith in the turning of the seasons. They knew that the cold was not just weather. It was a spirit, ancient and alive, slumbering beneath the snowfields. The villagers of Hrossfell, a settlement that no longer exists on any map, believed winter had three faces. The first was Skaldi, the pale wanderer who brought the first frost. She was not cruel, they said, only necessary. Her breath stiffened the rivers, her hand cooled the fevered earth. When she came, they left bowls of milk and honey on their doorsteps and whispered thanks for her mercy. The second was Varka, the devourer. He came when the sun's strength failed entirely. His voice was the wind that howled through broken shutters, his hunger the gnawing cold that stole into marrow. They feared him, but they also respected him, for without Varka's long sleep, the land would never rest, and the harvest would never return. And last was the youngest, Irva, the morning star. She was neither cruel nor kind, but sorrowful. They said she wept for the things the snow buried, the forgotten faces, the frozen birds, the lost children who wandered too far into the drifts. Her tears were the thaw that came at winter's end, and every drop carried memory. Each solstice, the villagers gathered in the hall of pine logs, lit by blue flames that burned from resin-soaked torches. They sang the old hymns and recited the winter's tale, how Skaldi and Varka once walked the world as lovers, and how Irva, their child, rose to the sky when they vanished beneath the ice. The songs kept the balance. The people believed that if they were ever forgotten, winter would no longer end. For centuries, the ritual held, until one year, the songs were not sung. The storm came early that season, a storm that began as a whisper from the northern mountains and grew into something that swallowed the horizon. The villagers called it the White Mouth. For 7 days and nights, snow fell without pause. The cattle froze in their pens, the wells vanished beneath mounds of ice, and even the church bell, the one they'd hung to replace their old wooden totems, cracked under the weight of frost. The new preacher, Father Alden, told them to stay inside. "These pagan songs are blasphemy," he said, his breath fogging the air inside the chapel. "You will pray to God, not to ghosts of snow." He burned the old carvings that once stood by the gate, the statues of Skaldi and Varka, their faces worn smooth by centuries of wind. On the 8th day, the storm ceased, but the silence that followed was worse. Not the clean stillness of snowfall, but a silence that pressed against the skull, heavy and breathing. The air shimmered faintly, and the ground began to groan. Deep, long cracks snaking across the village square. Children spoke of shapes moving through the blizzard's tail, a figure white as bone, walking upright, but leaving no footprints. Another, vast and formless, crouched by the frozen river, where the water moved beneath the ice, like a trapped animal. Then came the night of the candles. One by one, every flame in the village went out. Hearths, lanterns, the chapel's single candle, all extinguished in a single breath. People stumbled through the blackness, clutching their rosaries, calling for Father Alden. When the moon finally broke through the clouds, they found him frozen at the chapel door, his eyes glassed over with frost, his hands clasped in prayer that had turned to ice. In the days that followed, the survivors buried their dead beneath cairns of snow. None would go near the chapel again. The old woman named Thera, the last who remembered the hymns of Skaldi, took the villagers to the edge of the woods and sang alone into the wind. They said the snow around her melted just a little, as if listening. That spring never came. Years turned, and Hrossfell vanished under drifting ice. The mountains reclaimed the fields, the wind swallowed the paths. Only the tallest pine, a twisted black thing at the village center, remained, half buried, its roots gripping the bones of the chapel below. Travelers who pass near the region in winter say they hear music when the blizzard begins, like distant voices carried in the snow. They call it the cry of Hrossfell. Centuries later, long after the maps changed and the old faiths were dust, a research team went north to study glacial shifts. Among them was a young woman named Eleanor Hale, quiet, thoughtful, fond of the old folklore. She had grown up hearing her grandmother speak of the snow gods, tales her professors dismissed as myth. But she carried those stories like half-remembered dreams. The team camped near the coordinates once believed to be Hrossfell. The air there was unnaturally still, even for the Arctic Circle. Snow fell in perfect spirals, never chaotic, as though something unseen was watching. Eleanor kept a journal. Her last entry read, "Temperature dropping faster than expected. Strange resonance detected beneath the ice. Rhythmic, almost vocal. It sounds like singing." That night, her colleagues vanished. The tent stood untouched, the equipment still humming, but there were no footprints leading away, only smooth, unbroken snow. When rescuers arrived weeks later, they found the journal frozen to the ground beside her satchel. The ink on the final page had bled, but the words were still legible. Skaldi is awake. The rescuers reported no signs of human remains, though several claimed to hear faint whispering as they left the site. A woman's voice, gentle but mournful, repeating an old lullaby in a language none recognized. In the years since, the phenomenon has grown. Satellite images show strange geometric shapes forming briefly in snowfields before fading. Triangles and spirals, like ancient sigils etched into the ice itself. Weather patterns shift unpredictably near the region. Machines fail. Radios whisper static that sometimes sounds like weeping. Locals say that winter is lengthening, that every year the thaw comes later, and the rivers stay silent longer. Scholars who study the myth of Hrossfell argue that the forgotten gods were never deities at all, merely personifications of nature's cruelty. But others whisper that when the old songs died, something essential was broken, that the gods of frost were not destroyed, only denied, left to starve in the silence where worship used to be. And what is a god, if not a memory with hunger? Some say Skaldi wanders still, veiled in white, searching for those who remember her name. Vaka, her eternal lover, drifts beneath the ice, a shadow that follows the river's south. And Irva, poor, sorrowful Irva, lights the sky in her mother's absence, her tears falling as frozen rain. Eleanor's journal now lies in a museum vault in Oslo. Scholars avoid speaking of it, though some claim it still feels cold to the touch, colder than paper should be. In its margins are sketches of three figures: a tall woman with eyes like glass, a shapeless form devouring stars, and a girl crowned with frost, holding a lantern made of tears. Each winter, When the days shorten and the snow begins to fall, the curators swear they hear a faint hum from the vault below, 3 voices blending, ancient and unending. And somewhere, beneath the endless ice, something stirs. The world breathes in. The silence begins again. Thank you for listening to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. If you enjoyed tonight's story, remember to subscribe and keep the fire burning. Winter is coming.
Under the ice where the voices sleep, I hear them whisper through stone. The gods of frost still breathe beneath, calling me to come home. Scaldy, take my breath away. Varkur, guard the bones that stay. Yerva, light the frozen sky, and teach the living how to die. The world forgets what the silence carries. Each tear becomes a star. The cold is not the end, it lingers closer than we are. Scaldy, take my breath away. Varkur, guard the bones that stay. Yerva, light the frozen sky, and sing me home when I close my eyes. The white wind sighs. The silence lies. Scaldy, take my breath away. Varkur, guard the bones that stay. Yerva, weep the dawn anew. I'll sleep beneath the frost.